Right. My presentation is of a paper in process. It's to become a chapter in an edited volume, which is called Educational Standardization in a Complex World, um, which is to be released by Emerald in 2021. Um, and with an approximate title like here, Terms of Talent, in a Danish context. The work on it is a result of research on a talent academy, which was carried out in 2017-2018 school year by a research assistant, Anna Bomholt, employed to do this, and it's written up in Danish in another report, in a research report, which is available on the VPN. My interest in the education policy agenda of talent goes back to 2006, so it goes back a lot longer, when I was incidentally involved as researcher on a talent class project. And my point of departure is the new talent agenda, which has appeared as an important part of the education policies in Denmark since the 1990s, actually. It's described like this in 2006 to legitimate fundings of talent activities. And it contains different arguments for the talent agenda in education. That young people lack challenges indirectly states that the present school system, in the name of an inclusive school for all, promotes mediocrity over merit and standards of excellence, and can be seen as an educational argument promoting individualism. That efforts to develop the able pupils' influence on other pupils too constitutes another educational argument, promoting a social point of view on education, and that it forms part of the government strategy to give Denmark a leading position in the knowledge economy can be seen as an economic argument, conceiving education in capital terms. This policy was further developed in a report in 2011, where it was written that all levels and institutions of the education system was to have formulated policies on activities targeting the talented students. I conceptualize policy as both documents produced at the transnational and national levels, and policy production enacted at the regional and school level, with inspiration from Robert Cohen and Stephen Ball. So therefore, the analysis involves multi-level processes of interpreting the meaning of documents and of translating text into action, as the Ball, etc. Frame it. At the level of transnational policies, it implies interpretation of talent strategies, and at the school level, it implies analyzing the transfer, translation, and transformation of creating local and institutional texts and practices, and embedding them within activities such as talent classes. This offers a vertical perspective ranging from the global space to the local context, involving that I zoom out both internationally and historically, and zoom in on particular school activities. So I'll combine the empirical levels of macro and micro by referring to policy texts and enactment process. As empirical elements at local level, it's based on a case study of a particular program involving semi-structured interviews with 12 students, 6 teachers, and 2 leading persons. And they are supported by observations and documentary material. So Talent, zooming out first and considering the international perspective, European education politics and policies are increasingly framed by international programs which are supported by EU project funding. An example is one that supports policies of setting higher standards in an Erasmus Plus program located in the Netherlands and focused on talent education. The projected program here is based on claims that students in secondary education is regularly bored because the learning material is too easy, and that many of these students would like to receive additional attention or extra learning material on a higher level. The project further claims that in most of the European countries, gifted students perform below their level. In comparison to new economies like Singapore, Finland, and South Korea, they are very much behind. Students from the partner countries in the project, it claims, with reference to TIMSS data, that the Netherlands, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic perform even worse than other countries in the international rankings on talent development. The international surveys thus provide an important framework for such European education policies. It appears that there's a close relation between those involved in the collection of data at European level and at international level in the OECD. And for instance, PISA has functioned to provide data on the European education. So they shape the European policies, how they operate and what they focus on. And considering the historical perspective, it should be said that in a historical perspective, the general upper secondary school, which this is focused on, the gymnasium in Denmark, has always had an elite target. Until the second half of the 20th century, it recruited less than 5% of a cohort. From the 1960s onwards, however, the general educational expansion also meant an explosion in the number of students recruited for the gymnasium. Despite its growth, the gymnasium has retained its independent status in the educational system and its relationship to the traditions of Bildung and didactics of continental Europe. While Swedish and Norwegian forms of democracy have promoted the establishment of a comprehensive system, the Danish gymnasium is still to some extent considered elitist. This is due to the sharp division in upper secondary education between the vocational and academic track, where the gymnasium has safeguarded the latter. But the students represent a much more diversified group than earlier, it has to be emphasized. And the increased number of students, the more diversified student group, together with the more intense competition on study places after upper secondary school, has created a situation of educational inflation, you can say, which combines a fear of leveling down and destruction of high academic standards. Historically, the Danish school system has built on an ideal of providing education for all, which is also explicated in the law of the upper secondary gymnasium. Its departure is to consider the well-being and academic progress of all students, regardless of social origin, and assure that the students qualify as much as they can. However, it's also emphasized that the institutions should assure differentiated teaching, considering students with special needs and talents by assuring special offers or programs for them. So this is sort of the legal context for it all. And as you see here, the program is located in a specific region, and it has been studied in particularly two institutions selected due to their different approaches and close or proximity to the program management. There is another program, almost national in its coverage, as it covers the three other major regions in Denmark. And as such, we're dealing with something which is somewhat in opposition to the general program. This local program having its own local approach to talent. Yeah, and now I'll draw on the ethnographic data from the course of the 1-year program. And what you see here is how the program defines the terms of talents by referring to subjects and schoolmates. All along, it also emphasizes the comparative aspects in these keywords, as the display of talent is visible in relation or comparison to others. This makes it highly dependent on the context in which it's located and identified, as the environment per se will determine how fierce the competition will be, who will be winners and losers. And at the same time, the program refers to theories of Gagne, psychological perspective, that emphasize how the development of talent happens in a dynamic interplay with the surroundings. Anyway, competition stands out as the important element in the talent selection from what appears in this official presentation of the Talent Academy. And now to the organizational points and perspectives. In addition to the facts mentioned on this slide, the management of the upper secondary educational institutions have their own market-oriented agendas for participating in the program and hosting talent activities. They participate in the program because it's now stated by law that they need to have such provisions for the talented students. And secondly, the managers consider an investment in future students in the interest of the institutions and according to a market logic. Thus, because of the so-called structural reform in 2006, leading to the abolishment of the counties, and that the upper secondary educational institutions were transformed into self-governing institutions referring directly to the state, they became more exposed to market conditions. They now have to compete to attract as many students as possible to increase their market share and economic power. The talent agenda might help them profile their institution to new and attractive student groups, and thus, in a very direct sense, play into the neoliberal reform of privatization and self-governance.
About 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that'll do. Thank you. As the teacher describes here, in the departure, he associated talent with the comparative aspect of being better. But during the process of involvement in the program, he has developed a different understanding, which is the will or drive to learn. This definition is closer to seeing talent as a potential to becoming better than an actual performance of being among the best. The distinction between potential and performance raises concerns as to the normative standards against which to identify the talent, as pointed out in literature on the pedagogic problematics of identifying talents, and to the actual disciplinary content, as pointed out by, for instance, Richard Sennett. And now we have a student perspective. This student considers creativity and curiosity the most important aspects of talent, which coincides very well with the description in the earlier mentioned talent program presentation of talent criteria. As the student is used to performing by way of music activities, she is probably more apt to demand performativity than students who aren't used to performing. Thus, other interests or leisure time activities can bring young people in a variety of situations with opportunities with opportunities to perform and gain experience and practice, uh, which then provide them with the resources and repertoires to draw on as they move into other spheres of life. And in this way, talent activities like educational activities in general, when emphasizing and valuing certain qualities more than others, tend to underpin social inequalities. Others think that the term, well, other students think that the term of talent is problematic because they find it hard to claim that they have a talent without sounding somewhat arrogant. As another student states, I don't think of myself as somebody who is talented, but more as somebody who may have an interest. And in this way, there's among some of the young people an inclination to not standing out from the mass. This is sometimes considered a peculiar Danish phenomenon, although in general it's linked to rural areas with peasant roots, not just in Denmark. And for the analysis of the student perspectives, I draw on the capital concepts of Bourdieu to conceptualize the social background, and also on the code concept of Basil Bernstein, the British education sociologist, to conceptualize the pedagogic practice context of it. And the final slide, conclusion. The concept of talent carries with it terms of economic, pedagogical, social, and psychological dimensions. The handling of talent in education, be that in terms of policy or practice, reflects this complexity. But the analysis also indicates the presence of policies strongly giving priority to economic concerns um, and competitive individualism. And in a wider perspective, the observation is reflected in what can be called a one-dimensional understanding of the world economy, that individualization of success and failure combines with the vague and opaque idea of material progress. Yeah, so I think I have to finish as quick as it appears and could be shown from quotes. The talent policies provide systems in which education becomes self-referential and reified for consumption. Thus, individual learners happen to want what the system needs in order to perform well. This happens as they are encouraged to see their own development as linked to and provided for by the growth of the institution and the nation. So let this be the last words. And I just finish off by showing you, well, showing off some of my other publications in the field of talent development and policies in education. Thank you.